Hey there, and welcome to the Lore After Show. We're talking episode 3, Hinterkaifeck. That one's a fun mouthful. And Ghosts in the Attic. Who really did it? Let us know your thoughts later. Stay tuned.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
I know it's a very serious episode, but this is a song that came to my mind. I'm like, yes. Anyways, welcome to the Lore After Show. We're talking episode 3, Hinterkaifeck, Ghosts in the Attic. Mwahaha, but there were no ghosts. Ugh. Anyway, my name is Kari Lane. I'm joined by my awesome co-host,
Mina Wahab.
And let's dive into this episode. So this episode, if you listen to the podcast, is episode 27, On the Farm, which I personally like the podcast a little bit better of it. Mina, initial thoughts on this episode? You are wound up.
No, like I literally texted you like before showtime, and I was like, I cannot watch this show anymore because honestly, I hate watching horror. I'm always on edge. I'm always like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it.
You signed up for this show.
I know. I didn't think it was gonna be like this though. But no, I actually thought it was really well done.
Mm-hmm.
But in some regards, it was just like, we knew what was happening. So it was, you know when something's so dark and messed up and horrible that it's kind of comical because it's like, okay, you're going to kill this guy and it's cheesy. It's kind of like with that axe thing and then, oh, you're going to go to the other one. Yeah. Okay, like we know what's going to happen, but it's just that awful feeling of suspense. We know what's going to happen. I don't want to see it. I don't
You're
want
like,
to
I'm
see
good.
it.
I don't need to see it.
I'm so glad they didn't show the one with the baby. I was literally like cringing. I was like, don't show it. Don't show it.
Yeah. This one I think was shot really well. I feel the pacing again was super slow.
It was.
It was very slow at the beginning because these characters, I know they're kind of establishing who they are, but I just didn't really care about a lot of them. I think the cinematography was gorgeous, like the farm at night with the fog and the cow in the middle area. Mm-hmm. Like the courtyard was gorgeous and creepy, but it was just like, okay, can we get to it? Can we get to where it's going? And the detective bits. I love the detective and them trying to figure out what happened. Weird question, not really weird, but so do you think where is she? Okay, Victoria, our main like mom character.
Victoria
Gabriel. Do you think her father is the father of her baby, the young one? Because they hint it's incestuous.
It's so funny because I didn't really pick up on that. The one who was abusive, who said like, learn how to raise your daughter. She speaks too much.
Yeah.
I don't know why I didn't read that. I didn't feel that at all. There was like a slight undertone, but I was like, wait, no, that doesn't make sense. But maybe, who knows? This was like what, 1922? I wouldn't be.
It still happens to.
I mean,
anywhere.
That's true.
Well, they do it very subtly because the daughter has a line to the new maid coming in, like, well, I have these color eyes, and my brother has different eyes, as in we have different fathers. And it could be the guy that she was hinted at hooking up with. Or a relationship with, which it hints at he is the father of the baby, because at the very end when he comes like, oh, where's my child?
And that would make sense why the murders happen if it was from the person that we expect it to be.
Yeah,
because it's a weird like jealousy. You cheated on me with your I don't know.
No, the other guy who was like looking through everything. Where was his name?
I can't remember. Yeah, there's so many names to keep.
But
track
the
of, and they're all like
comes
German.
in. Anyway, it's hinted that he's the father. Also, the podcast doesn't clarify either because they don't really know. It's hinted that since that, like, they all knew that the grandfather was a very horrible person. Yeah. So I think it's interesting they kind of touch upon it. Anyway,
I like what you were saying, though, like how you're like, I don't know why they were telling us about these characters. Usually I love when you have a character backstory, right? It makes sense because you begin to develop empathy for characters so that when they're gone, you're like, no. Yeah, you're like, oh, but like they gave us all these weird details about their lives, but they never like created a feeling of empathy. Like, oh, we're tied to these characters. So like, why go into all this detail when you're not going to form an attachment to the characters? That's what I found very interesting. Like, what was the purpose of having the backstory? Was it just kind of like a period piece? Like, this is what life was like in the 1920s in this modern day Germany. Yeah. So I just. Yeah, that's why I was a little like, why are they... that's why it felt so slow. Like, okay, where are we going with this?
Can we get to
what's going on?
Because we know they're gonna die.
Yeah, we know they're gonna die. Like, tell us what's gonna happen.
Yes.
Like, what's happening?
Then with our inspector, where'd it go? Inspector George Reingruber. I thought he was super interesting, and them breaking that down, I almost thought he did it. Mm-hmm. And I like how they played out the scenario of having each person they thought who did it, and like played out the scene with them doing it. Like they thought it was her husband who had died at war, so they show you that. And then they go, well, maybe it was this guy. Then they show you that. And then maybe it was the previous maid, and they show you that, which they do in a movie called Limehouse Golem. Highly recommend it. It's pretty cool. They do the same thing. Like, as they're theorizing who did it, they show it. Yeah, that's like a
theme. It's like a whodunit theme. Like, it's happened in other movies that I can't pinpoint, but I really like that. Because when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this is definitely the killer. That's it. Until it was like, I noticed it was a stylistic choice, which I like that.
And then with this episode, I like the photos at the end, the real photos. Mm-hmm. So thank you. This is what was kind of like the original season 1, is they have a little bit of photos, they had the text, the fact that they never found out who did it. It's like one of the most unsolved mysteries. Though apparently students today figured it out, but they're not going to tell us because somebody's still alive. I'm like, come on.
That made me so angry. I was like, what relatives are going to care about something that happened in 1920? Like, it's not, I just could not wrap my head around it. It sounded like the weirdest, like, excuse not to tell something. It's a biggest cop-out.
Like, really?
Yeah, it felt like it was made up. But I kept thinking, like, if this happened in today's day and age, it would be so much easier to figure out the killer because of technology, forensics. Like, I kept, when they were like going through each picture and they were pushing it in with the push pin and putting it on the wall, like, I was just like, how did you ever figure out anything back in the day? Like, how would you ever be able to confirm or deny anything without technology? It never occurred to me how lucky we are to live in a day and age where you can hold people accountable to the things they do because of the amazing technology we have, where we're able to find the killer, even though it's not 100% accurate. But still, like, how was
since he stayed there for like a week, there would be so much DNA everywhere. I would think fingerprints everywhere that they could have looked it up.
And also, he stayed there after he killed everyone. Like, what?
I don't think it's anybody related. I felt it was a random person
that stayed there.
Yeah.
You don't think it was the killer that stayed there?
No. I meant, like, the killer is an unknown to this family person.
Oh.
I don't think it was a husband back from war. I don't think it was the other lover and, like, murdered his own child. I'm like, no. I feel, because they mention already, too, that right by a train track, they mentioned how in America there had been a serial killer that way, too. I'm like, no, it's just a sociopath serial killer and that's how they were okay to be there for a while. And, like, they killed people and were there, and they took care of the animals. I know, that was something, too. They took care of the animals, and they said the way they did it, they knew it was someone who knew a farm. Yeah. So, or it was somebody...
That's just the part that was so mind-blowing. Like, you're going to commit this horrendous act.
And take care of the animals.
But, take care of them. Because usually I feel like you link, you know, if you're... We see with serial killers, like, when they were kids, they tortured, like, insects. Or they did, like, they burned ants with a magnifying glass. Or they started ripping apart. Like, that's how it starts, right? You see the signs early on. So the fact that would be juxtaposed with, like... being a kind
for those listening on iTunes lover. I am totally just shrugging of like, well, you know,
it is what it is.
Speaking of that, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, click that subscribe button, and if you're on iTunes, make sure to leave 5 stars and let us know what you think of the show. And then, Mina, you let us know about some other shows real quick.
Yeah, you know, our network actually produces after shows for nearly all your favorite TV shows, not just lore. We have dramas, reality TV, sci-fi, and even more. There's no other network that works harder to serve TV fans. But we need your help. We're asking that you please subscribe to one or more of our YouTube channels. By subscribing to our channel, YouTube will suggest content that is tailor-made for you. And you'll help AfterBuzz continue to grow. And if you're worried about those really annoying notifications, don't be, because they're totally optional. So hit that subscribe button right below. Yeah, right there. I'm going to give you 3 seconds. You got it. And check out our other AfterBuzz YouTube channels as well. Let us know you did so in the comments section, and we'll shout you out on air next week. And for now, thank you so much for helping us be the ESPN of TV talk.
Yes, and thank you. We already had some comments on our previous videos. Thank you very much. Let us know what you're thinking of these episodes. And we talked about this before of it's okay not to love the episodes too, because that's how, I'll be honest, that's how I'm feeling of I loved season 1 so much, even though I felt some of the reenactments were a little corny or went on a little too long. This one, I'm missing so much of what season 1 had.
Right.
Which, actually, speaking of that, our special segment for you of some, I would say it's news. We got our news. Did we get our news music? I was like, there we go. Yay! Sorry, I didn't cue that up right. So for FlickeringMyth.com, Aaron Mahnke, the creator of Lore the Podcast, did an interview at New York Comic Con earlier in October, talking about the show deviating from the podcast, which personally I don't love that, but that's okay. So, for example, our next episode we're going to talk about Prague Clock, Curse of the Horloge. That is not a podcast, by the way. So, like, why did they deviate? So, he was asked, Aaron Mahnke from Flickering Myth, how do you feel about the decision to break away from the source material of the podcast for 2 episodes this season? Aaron Mahnke said, it's fantastic. Quote, it's fantastic. So what we learned in season 1 is that there are some podcast episodes that just won't translate to video. Echoes, season 1, episode 2, we kind of cheated on because Echoes is a podcast episode about a building called Danvers State Hospital and mental health is as an industry in the early 1800s. We didn't do a TV episode on that. We did it on Dr. Walter Freeman, which still connects. He's a bit of part of the podcast, but he's a character in the show. We just learned that some don't adapt well. There are some stories that are going to only work in video format, and Jack Parsons' story and the Prague Clock, so tune in for our next episode talking about the Prague Clock, because we'll talk about that, are both stories that would not work in the podcast format because they're so visual. They're rich in visual elements, and that helps tell the story, and I can't do that with my voice. Though, sir, I beg to differ. You're a great podcaster. So also they did start working on season 2 pretty much right after they finished season 1. And so they kind of talk about that it's never really been done to make a show out of a podcast. So mad props to them for doing that. I do hope for season 3 that they kind of find the happy medium and do some elements from 1 and take the amazing visual storytelling they're doing in season 2 and put them together. So if you're interested in that, we'll give our social later, and I'll link it because this was kind of interesting. But it's on FlickeringMyth.com. So that was our news on that. So we'll get back some more thoughts on this episode. So, again, visual style, I think they're doing great storytelling, but I would have wanted even more stats and documents. We get it at the end, and that helps, but the not knowing it, I mean, I guess that's how you'll never know on some things. Felt really unsatisfying for me. Did you feel? How did you feel at the end of the episode?
I felt the same way. I felt like everything was shrouded in mystery. I was so annoyed because it almost felt like they were gonna find the person, and they were so decisive. Like, oh, it's this person. Like, did you see how he reacted when he looked at the... Like, that's not how you figure out who the perpetrator of a crime is. It just felt like very, like, crude methods of investigation. And I just was like, they're never going to figure this out. Like, this is so frustrating.
And they don't.
But we have all these facts, like, that I guess weren't specifically stated. If you want to know more about the 6 victims who were present, they were the parents, Andreas Gruber, who was 63 years old, and Kazilia, 72 years old.
Which is interesting. His wife is almost 10 years older than him.
That's like, so strange.
Patriarch,
for in 1922 to have that dynamic.
Much older woman,
I've never heard of that. And then their widowed daughter, Victoria Gabrielle, 35 years old. Victoria's children, Kazilia, also named Kazilia, 7 years old, and Joseph, 2 years old, and the maid, Maria Baumgartner, 44 years old. So 6 people, and the whole range, like from a baby to like someone who's 72.
A grandparent. Grandparent. They were grandparents. Yeah.
It really was a wide range of people. And just some backstory, Hinterkaifeck was a small farmstead situated between the Bavarian towns of Ingolstadt and Schrobenhausen, and this is 70 kilometers north of Munich. So it's in modern day Germany, essentially.
Which on the podcast they mention the farm and any other possible information has been lost in like World War II. So it's like any other, like them finding more, but they supposedly know. I said who I thought it might be. Who do you think it was?
I don't know. I really don't. Like, we don't have sufficient evidence for anything. The way this story was portrayed was some cloaked figure just getting this dagger and like stabbing everyone. Like, we don't know if it's something motivated by motive or if it's just like
Random.
I kind of like your theory because it sounds like a psychopath. Like, who else is going to be that good at doing something like that? Like, you've got to be a psychopath because this was something that was calculated. Like, it felt like the killing was enjoyable for the killer.
Oh, that's the other thing, too. It mentioned in the podcast. So it's one of those, I think if you like the episodes, go listen to the podcast and you'll get more. They were lured out one at a time to, like, the barn, and that's how they got killed.
Yeah.
Which is one of those, I don't know exactly how they know that, but that's how they... See, that's the other thing. I want more information, like how do they know some stuff? But I think it probably explained it a little better in the podcast. But
I wouldn't be surprised if they knew that by how the bodies were decaying. So like some were decaying at some were in a certain stage of decay and others weren't.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, this happened one by one because there's a gradual decay in body. I don't know when
go
was
listen
it?
to the podcast.
I just want to know when it was discovered that all these bodies were there.
It was the postman. Just like the episode, the postman came, small town,
how much
and
after?
noticed.
How long after it happened? Like, I want to know if the corpses were totally rotted. If
Things
they
like
were...
it was a week because he was there a week before people showed up.
Oh, that's true.
And they had noticed the post hadn't been picked up since like the previous week.
Oh,
yes. So pick up the mail, serial killers. That's how they find you out. Leave your comments down below who you thought it was, who the killer was, and any other comments on the episode. Any other final thoughts?
This show is like tripping me out. I can't. Like, I thought it was really well done, and I was very impressed with the shots and the cinematography. There were some really cool angles with some of them, and I was like, this feels like very high production value.
Very
yeah, it's like cinematic.
Cinematic, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's that word?
It is, and it's so interesting that you would do that with Amazon Prime. I love that concept that we have this platform for this type of quality of work.
And I like that Amazon Prime, not sponsored. I'm like, we're totally promoting them. I like that they took a chance on this kind of a show, and it's, based on a podcast, and like, let's make it. Because it's such great, I like all these mini stories, and that's what's so fun is you get to sit and get this little mini one. Though, again, pacing was a little slow. But yeah, I think that kind of covers it for this one. I'm excited to talk. Our next episode is going to be the Clock Tower one, so stay tuned for that. Where can they find you online?
You guys can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Mina Makes Magic, or you can go to my website, minamakesmagic.com.
And you can find me online at Kari D. Lane, that's Karidlane, and make sure to tune in for our next episode, which we're actually filming right after this, just to get that behind-the-scenes info. We're going to talk about the Prague Clock Tower. Mwahaha. All right, see you later.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.